today we will focus on getting what is called the orbit equation, and we will apply this to the Coulomb potential as an example, because Coulomb potential basically covers two of the most important types of systems which we are usually interested in. One is planetary orbits around the sun, and the other is Bohr model of the atom. And even though, of course, the same classical mechanics cannot be used to describe the Bohr quantum mechanical atom, many of the things do carry through, and you can actually correlate them. So it is worthwhile to discuss that particular problem. Okay. All right. So if you remember where we stood last time, just for a revision, we had reduced the central force problem to a planar motion problem, where we say that the two-body system is equivalent to a single body of mass mu, where mu is a reduced mass. We are writing it as m, but basically when you translate it back, this m is nothing but m1 m2 upon m1 plus m2, and that effective mass is moving around a particular center, that is, it is always attracted towards the origin in the coordinate system which we have chosen, and therefore the Lagrangian is restricted to a single plane. So you can describe it in terms of r and theta coordinates, plane polar coordinates, and the Lagrangian you write down is this one, and this leads to equations of motion which are as follows. One equation is mr double dot is equal to mr theta dot square minus dabba v by dabba r, and the other equation is, actually let me write it the other way around. Let me write the theta equation first. The reason will become clear in a moment. The theta equation is theta dot is equal to L by mr square, where L is a constant. Okay. It actually turns out to be d by dt of mr square theta dot equal to 0, and then the integration constant you choose as L, and so you get this. And the r equation of motion is mr double dot is equal to mr theta dot square minus dabba v by dabba r, which you can rewrite by substituting theta. You can write this as L square by m r cube plus f of r, where f is defined as the radial force, which is minus the gradient of the potential in the radial direction. Basically your usual definition of force when it is derived from a potential. Okay. So you can write the r equation two different ways, and once you have substituted theta dot as we have done, basically you have a decoupled equation, that is the r equation depends only on r, and so you can actually solve that. That was the idea which we had, and we have seen that we can in principle solve this whole problem without much of trouble by starting with your definition of energy. You need not do that. When you integrate this, ultimately you will get an integration constant which happens to be the total energy of the system. But basically we took the heuristic approach where we said that total energy equal to this much, and we got the expression for r dot from there. Okay. However, that gives r as a function of time and theta as a function of time. Many times we are more interested in knowing directly what is r as a function of theta. The reason is that r as a function of time and theta as a function of time separately, I don't use that information anywhere. Rather, I want to know this is the center of the force, this is the particle. So at different angles theta, where is the particle? Is it close? Is it far away? That is more important. The time aspect of it doesn't come into the picture, because for bound state orbits, the system is going to be bound around the center of force. And therefore, when it started moving in that central force field is not a very important question. Or where it is at a given point of time, what is the value of r and what is the value of theta. Instead of that, I am much more interested in when it is at different thetas, at what distance is it. Classic example, planetary orbits. I do care when the particular planet will come into a particular position, but that can easily be tracked as a function of where it is in the sky, which direction it is, and what is its distance. So we can, without losing much information, we can basically directly try to get r as a function of theta. And when we try to do it, basically such an equation for r as a function of theta or theta as a function of r is called an orbit equation. Okay? It is an equation for the orbit. And it turns out that whatever equations we already have, the equations of motion, particularly the radial equation of motion, it can easily be translated in terms of a differential equation which relates r with theta. How do you proceed for this? Basically, you start with this equation which you already have, which is one of the equations of motion, one of the Lagrange equations of motion. Of course, it turns out as a conservation law, but nevertheless, it started out as a Lagrange equation of motion. And since we know this, we can also write the time derivative operator d by dt, which will be d by d theta into d theta by dt. D theta by dt is nothing but theta dot, and therefore this turns out to be L by mr square d by d theta. So operating the time derivative operator on any given function or any given object is the same, or it is the equivalent to operating this operator. That is, d by dt anywhere in any equation can be replaced by L by mr square d by d theta. Instead of d by dt, I can write this. Okay. So particularly, for example, what will be r dot? R dot is dr by dt, which can be written as L by mr square dr by d theta. Similarly, r double dot can be written as L by mr square d by d theta operating on L by mr square dr by d theta, which we can write as L square by m square r square d by d theta of 1 by r square dr by d theta. If you examine the quantity inside the bracket, you will find that this is the same as minus d by d theta of 1 by r. This is clear because if you do d by d theta of 1 by r, you are going to get minus 1 by r square into dr by d theta. And this minus takes care of that minus, and therefore you are left with this. So I can write this as, or let me write it this way. Finally, r double dot is nothing but L square by m square r square d square by d theta square operating on 1 by r. If I substitute this into my original r equation of motion, I get L square by m r square d square by d theta square operating on 1 by r. There will be a minus sign. My mistake. Minus L square by m r cube plus dabba v by dabba r is equal to 0. This will be my r equation of motion after substituting this particular expression for r double dot. The expression for r double dot comes about because I have this particular operator equation. d by dt can be written as L by m r square d by d theta. Okay. Suppose I change the variable. Suppose I say let u be equal to 1 by r. Then of course dabba by dabba u will be dabba by dabba r into dabba r by dabba u, or let us take what will be dabba by dabba r. Dabba by dabba r will be same as which is minus 1 by r square dabba by dabba. Actually, this whole means the partial derivative can be written as a total derivative because this whole expression depends only on r. V also depends only on r. So this can be written as a total derivative. Barely matters, but just wanted to point that out. If you make this substitution in this equation, then what do you get? And noticing that there is a L square by mr square common, you can multiply both the sides by mr square by L square. You will end up with the following equation: d square u by d theta square plus u minus mr square by L square into minus 1 by r square dabba v by dabba u is equal to 0. As I said, we can dispense with the partial derivative and call it a total derivative because it is only a function of that variable. The minus sign cancels, the r square cancels, and you are left with an equation of this type: d square u by d theta square plus u is equal to 0. This is called the orbit equation because this gives you a differential equation which you can solve. After substituting the particular form of v, you can simplify this expression and solve that differential equation to obtain u as a function of theta, which in turn will give you r as a function of theta. Okay. I am not sure whether I have missed a minus sign somewhere, so let us check that. There is a minus and there is another minus, and I am not sure whether we have missed a minus sign somewhere. That is my problem. I think we have. This is there is an m by L square which should come here. Sorry. think we are fine.
सर
Yes, बोलिए.
सर u इज इक्वल टू 1/r मीन्स म्हणजे कसं घेतलंय सर ते u इज इक्वल
Sorry.
टू 1/r
Yes,
ते
u is
म्हणजे
equal to 1 by r.
हा ते कसं कन्सिडर केलंय सर म्हणजे u
मॅथमॅटिक्स
काय आहे?
सिम्प्लिफाय करण्याकरता, बाकी काहीच काही
अच्छा.
फिजिकल सिग्निफिकन्स नाही.
अच्छा सर ओके सर.
मॅथमॅटिकल फॉर्म, आता जो ओरिजिनल इक्वेशन आहे ते पहा आणि जी फायनल इक्वेशन आहे ते पहा. फायनल इक्वेशन इज इन मच सिम्प्लिफाईड फॉर्म. फक्त मॅथमॅटिक्स सिम्प्लिफाय करण्याकरिता ते सबस्टिट्यूशन केलेलं आहे, बाकी काही नाही. ठीक आहे. u is 1 by r, it has some significance. When u goes to infinity, r will be going to 0. Therefore, u tending to infinity is the condition of approaching close to the center of force. u tending to 0 is the condition of r going to infinity. परंतु ते नंतर, that can come later on. ठीक है. As it stands, this is just a mathematical substitution to make your differential equation into a simple form. That's all. Is that okay?
Yes sir, okay.
There is no physical significance of u. It is not some recognizable physical quantity. It is reciprocal of distance. It has no particular significance, at least in this case. Okay? This is called the orbit equation in the differential form. Okay? Because it is written as a differential equation, you call it the orbit equation in differential form. We can also write a similar equation in integral form, just as we had written the expression for r, the explicit integration for r. Similarly, one can write an expression for r as a function of theta also. We'll come to that in a moment. At this stage, are all these steps, everything is clear to everyone? Mathematical steps. All right. All right, then let us move forward. Basically, what you have achieved here is the following, that you have now got a differential equation, which if you solve it, you will get u as a function of theta. U as a function of theta basically means r as a function of theta, because just 1 upon that will give you r as a function of theta. Okay? So let us try to see how this works. Okay? Let us try to take the example of the Coulomb potential, minus k by r potential. Okay? Call it Coulomb potential, call it Newtonian gravitational potential, whatever you want. I like to call this Coulomb potential. Okay? What will be v as a function of u? Bolo. Just substitute r as 1 by u. What will you get? Is the question clear? What will be v as a function of u? V as a function of r is minus k by r. What will be v as a function of u?
Minus ku.
Very good, excellent. Minus ku. And what will be dv by du?
Minus k.
Minus k. Okay. Now, what was your equation? D square u by d theta square plus u minus plus m by L square dv by du is equal to 0. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So this gives you basically d square u by d theta square plus u minus mk by L square is equal to 0. Correct? Just substituted dv by du as minus k. That's all. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
This is a differential equation. Can you spot the solution to this differential equation just by looking? Solution is very simple. Take a simple substitution. Let y be equal to u minus mk by L square. What will be d square y by d theta square? It will be same as d square u by d theta square because mk by L square is a constant. Correct? So उसका डेरिवेटिव निकालते हो 0 हो जाएगा वो. This gives you the differential equation for y in the following manner. What is the solution to this equation? What does this equation resemble? What does it look like? Some familiar thing? Bolo. What about if we write it like this? This is d square y by d theta square plus y equal to 0. Na? Suppose I write it like this. I write 1 square over here. 1 square is 1, na? So I can write that there. Now does it look familiar?
SHM.
Very good. It is an equation of simple harmonic motion with frequency 1. ठीक है, ओमेगा इक्वल टू 1. बराबर है ना? Yes or no? Others?
Yes, sir.
Others.
Yes, sir.
So even when omega is not there, you should know to recognize this. What is the characteristic of harmonic motion? Second derivative operator will be there and only the dependent variable will be there. And dependent variable multiplied by some constant. Okay? In this case, the constant is 1. What will be the solution? Can anyone tell me? Y equal to? This is like simple harmonic motion. Instead of x you have y, instead of t you have theta, instead of omega you have 1. So what will be the solution? Batao. What is the usual solution for harmonic oscillator?
It is oscillatory solution.
No, oscillatory means what is the mathematical form?
A cos omega t plus phi.
Okay, so in this case, what will it be? What is omega in this case?
Omega is 1.
What is the t in this case?
Theta.
Theta.
So A cos omega, theta plus phi.
Very good. Excellent. I am going to write that in slightly different manner. A solution to this is y is equal to, I am going to call the constant as b. Doesn't matter, but I am going to call it as b. Cosine of theta. This is omega t instead of omega t, and instead of phi, I am going to call the angle as theta prime, minus theta prime. Okay. So basically, you have got a amplitude term and you have got a phase term. This is always the case. Your harmonic oscillator solution will always, the general solution is always some amplitude with some phase. Okay. This is the solution. What does this mean in our usual scheme of things? This means that u minus mk by L square is some constant times cos of theta minus theta prime, where the constants b and theta prime are determined from the boundary conditions of the problem. Okay? They are constants of integration. You can write this in another way. You can write it as u is equal to mk by L square bracket 1 plus bl square by mk cos of theta minus theta prime. Is this okay? I have just taken mk by L square on the other side and then taken it out common. Is this okay with everyone? This form of the differential equation? Yes, no? Any doubts at this stage, please ask. Bolo.
No, sir.
Others? Everyone is satisfied that Bolo.
नहीं सर आगे समझ में.
Everyone is satisfied with this solution. It's a trivial solution, nothing great, but everyone is satisfied with this. No? Now, if you look into your yes, thank you, very nice. I am going to write this as 1 by r, by the way. That is what was my original intention. I want to know the relation between r and theta. Now, if you look at your results from coordinate geometry, you find that there is a standard equation of this type. Okay. This is defined in a plane. S and epsilon are constants. Okay. This is the standard equation for a conic section. Defined in a plane with plane polar coordinates r and theta. Okay. Out of that, the epsilon term is called the eccentricity. All of you must have studied basic conic sections in geometry. The eccentricity of a conic section decides what type of shape that particular conic section will take. Eccentricity equal to 0 means circle, eccentricity between 0 and 1 means ellipse, eccentricity equal to 1 means parabola, eccentricity greater than 1 means hyperbola. Are you familiar with these things? Yes, no?
हाँ सर.
Yes sir.
Very good. The factor S is called a scale factor. Basically, this bracketed term decides the shape, particularly the eccentricity decides the shape, and the scale factor decides the size of the orbit. In this case, since 1 by r is proportional to s, therefore larger the scale factor, smaller will be the actual orbit. That is the way it goes in this particular format of the equation. Okay. So now in our case, what do we have? What is the scale factor and what is the eccentricity factor in the case of the orbit equation which we have got?
The scale factor is mk upon L square. And
Very good.
eccentricity factor is BL square by mk.
Very good. So this is scale factor and this is eccentricity. And very important thing, we know that now that once the potential is equal to minus k by r, the orbit can only be a conic section, because the standard format of the equation of orbit is shows that it is a conic section. Barabar hai? Which means that basically always it will be either a circle or an ellipse or a parabola or a hyperbola. This is something which we did not know earlier. We have not yet completely solved this problem. The reason we have not completely solved, or reason we say we have not completely solved, is because there is the undetermined constant b, capital B, which we don't have any clue how to evaluate that right now. Correct? But at least we are at a stage where we can claim that we know a few things about the orbit due to a Kepler type or Coulomb type potential. Namely, first thing, the orbit is always a conic section. So you can have orbits which are circular, you can have orbits which are elliptical, you can have orbits which are parabolic, you can have orbits which are hyperbolic. No other possibilities are there. Okay? This is a very big jump in our understanding. Okay? Because this automatically brings into picture Kepler's first law of planetary motion. Does anyone know what is Kepler's first law of planetary motion? Or anyone can recollect?
The planets in an elliptical orbit and sun situated at one of the foci.
Very good. Planets follow elliptical orbits where one of the foci is the location of the sun. This particular standard form for conic section, the origin is one of the foci. That is how this particular form is derived. Okay? That's a mathematical thing. You can have a look at any standard book on coordinate geometry dealing with conic section. You will get this form. Okay? So the point is that sun is at the center of the force according to this whatever we have derived. So this seems to make sense in the light of Kepler's first law. However, we can try to go a little bit deeper into this problem because we don't know what is capital B. So if we can find that, then we can claim that we have completely solved the problem, basically. Okay? Right now also with this solution, you can make observations about planets and see how they are moving, and using their motion, using the conditions on y and theta, you can figure out what is B. That is always possible. Okay? That is always easy to or possible to do. But mathematically one can also get an expression for B. That is what we will do next. Okay? But right now we have concluded that the orbit of a planet around the sun or any object around the sun or a charged particle around a center of charge will always be in the form of a conic section only. Not just ellipse, it could be a parabola, hyperbola or circle also. Okay? Kepler had observed only for the major 9 planets, or actually at that time I think they were aware about planets till Saturn. So he had made basic conclusions based on those planets only, and all of them have elliptical orbits. But in principle, an object can have a circular orbit, it can have a parabolic, hyperbolic, any type of orbit. Okay? All right. Shall we move further? Is there any question at this stage? Please ask. Otherwise, we'll move. Moving further, let us try to write down the orbit equation in the integral form. That is the integral equation for the orbit. What we have derived earlier was the differential equation for the orbit. The orbit could also have an integral form of equation. Of course, we start in this case with our expression for r dot which we had. If you remember, this comes from the total energy term. The total energy is E is equal to half m r dot square plus L square by 2m r square plus V of r. And when you try to rearrange this equation to get an expression for r dot, this is the expression which you get. Okay. But what is r dot? We have already established that r dot is equal to L by m r square dr by d theta. Correct? If you throw your mind back, you had it somewhere. This one. L by m r square dr by d theta. Okay? It is just something which we wrote down along the way last time. So basically you can write dr by d theta is equal to mr square by L into square root of 2 e by m minus 2 v of r by m minus L square by m square r square. If you plug all these things inside, actually don't plug everything inside, let us do it this way. We can rearrange this to give no minus sign. 1 by r square dr by d theta is equal to, I have taken the r square back here. Of course, multiply this inside. What will you get? 2m e by L square minus 2m v of r by L square minus 1 by r square. What is 1 by r square dr by d theta? It is minus of d by d theta of 1 by r. बराबर है. Now, again, if you substitute u as 1 by r, then basically you get du by d theta is equal to minus square root of 2m e by L square minus 2m v by L square minus u square. If you rearrange this, you will finally get d theta is equal to minus 1 upon square root of 2m e by L square minus 2m v by L square minus u square du. If you carry this integration through, then you get theta is equal to integral minus integral 1 over square root of 2m e by L square minus 2m v by L square minus u square du plus an integration constant which I am going to call as theta prime. Okay? We are leaving it as an indefinite integral. Therefore, it will be of the form integral something something plus c. That plus c we are calling as theta prime. This is the integral form of the orbit equation. Again, it is the same thing. This is the generic form, and once you substitute the actual form of v of r, you can obtain the solution. Why we emphasize writing down the differential form separately and the integral form separately? I think this is important from a numerical standpoint. From the standpoint of solving this problem numerically. Suppose it is not analytically doable. There are very few problems which are analytically doable. If you want to do it numerically, then it is much better to recast your entire problem in terms of an integral equation, because integration numerically is trivial. Solving of differential equations numerically is not that straightforward, relatively. Okay? So, since you have a single variable equation which can be recast into an integral form like this, it makes sense to do that. Numerically, this is much more nicer to do than the differential form. Okay? Just pointing that part out. This is just mathematics. Is it okay? Is there any doubt at this stage? Please ask. Otherwise, we will move forward from here. This is just a rearrangement of what we have done last time. There is nothing great actually. Let us then move forward. Once again, let us take the same example. We are just revisiting it now in the light of the integral form. What was V of R? Bolo. What is V of U?
Minus KU.
Therefore, what will be theta? Or let me write it like this. Theta minus theta prime is equal to integral what? 1 upon square root of 2m e by L square minus क्या था? 2mv by L square ना?
Yes, sir.
So minus minus will become plus. You will get 2m k by L square times u. करेक्ट, माइनस के यू सब्स्टिट्यूट करने से माइनस यू स्क्वायर, थर्ड टर्म. Integration of this is equal to what we want, theta minus theta prime. What do you think is this integral? Is it doable? Hello?
Yes, sir. Doable.
What is the, how will you go about doing this integral?
म्हणजे मी डायरेक्ट सॉफ्टवेअर वगैरे यूज करून बोलते सर.
नाही, हे इंटेग्रेबल आहे फंक्शन, सॉफ्टवेअरची गरज नाही. This is analytically doable. Consider this. See, let me do an aside on the side of the board. Consider an integral of this format. Let me call it the integral I is equal to integral 1 over square root of, let me call it this way, a square plus 2bx minus x square. How will you do this thing?
A minus b the whole square.
A minus b the whole square में कैसे आएगा? इधर a square उधर 2b है.
सर थर्ड टर्म काढायला लागेल ना, मग त्याच्यावरनं मग ए स्क्वेअर मायनस स्क्वेअर टर्म दुसरा येईल एक इन टर्म्स ऑफ एक्स होल
Correct.
स्क्वेअर वाला टर्म येईल.
Correct. So basically you do completing the squares using these two terms. So if these two terms are there, if you add minus b square, that will complete this square. It will become x minus b the whole square. So you add and subtract b square. So you will get a square plus b square minus b square. This is what you added, by the way. Okay? Plus whatever was already there, 2bx minus x square. Just add and subtract b square in the denominator. But this b square now completes this square. This becomes x minus b the whole square. So you end up with integral 1 over square root of a square plus b square becomes one term minus x minus b the whole square. Is this okay? Is this what you meant?
यस सर.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Very good, very good. अभी क्या करने का? Take square root of a square minus b square common. A square plus b square, I'm sorry. Take this out common. Integral 1 over 1 minus x minus b the whole square upon this is okay? Everyone agrees?
Yes, sir.
Now substitute x minus b upon square root of a square plus b square. Let it be what? Cos theta. ठीक है? Or if you are unhappy with theta because theta is there in the main problem, cos phi. Okay. What will be dx upon square root of a square plus b square? क्या आएगा बोलो? Just differential of this guy.
Minus sin phi.
Minus sin phi d phi. बराबर है? So what becomes of your original integral? 1 upon square root of 1 minus cos square phi. What is square root of 1 minus cos square phi? Let me write it explicitly. Minus sin phi d phi upon square root of 1 minus cos square. What is 1 minus cos square phi?
Sin
Sin
square
phi.
phi.
sin square
उसका
phi.
स्क्वायर रूट क्या है?
Sin
Sin phi.
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 वही ऊपर भी है, तो दोनों कैंसिल हो जाएगा.
Yes, sir.
You get minus integral d phi, which is minus. ठीक है. What is phi now? Minus cos inverse. क्या था? x minus b upon square root of. ये थोड़ा टेढ़ा लिखा है, मेरे को मालूम है, वो थोड़ा हो गया वैसा. ठीक है, संभाल के लो तुम लोग. This happens in real life also on the blackboard. If I am writing in the corner, it happened here also. So maybe something wrong with my sense of direction when I come to the corner of the bending of space-time near the corners. All right. So everyone agrees with this one, this part of the thing.
Yes, sir.
This is a standard integral, but anyway we have done the whole thing. Okay? It is a standard one. From any textbook you can get this answer, but nevertheless we have done it in detail. Is it okay with everyone? Fine. Anyone
Yes,
has
sir.
any doubt in this particular derivation part, mathematical part? Yeah, I hope not. Good. Thank you. Then
Sir.
what do we? हाँ जी बोलिए.
इंटीग्रेशन वाले पार्ट में इन द थर्ड स्टेप इटसेल्फ इट इज ऑफ द फॉर्म 1 over under root नहीं ओके सॉरी आई मिस्ड
It is 1 over under root a square minus x square. I know you will get cos inverse or sin inverse. You can always write it down from that stage itself. But anyway, we did
Yes,
it
sir.
explicitly. ठीक है?
okay yes
Because it's a, I mean, some people would know this as a standard form right by looking at the first integral also. Okay, the initial integral itself is in a standard form only. Nevertheless, we did all the steps in detail at a like kind of 12 standard level, basic level. So I think this is okay. Why I am asking is I hope there is no mistake. If anyone can spot any mistake, then please tell. That's otherwise this is straightforward as such. Now in our problem, what is A? Inspect and tell. क्या है? A square rather. What is A square? This term is A square, ne? And this term is 2B. बराबर है?
Yes, sir.
So what is A square? एक बार list कर देते हैं. What is A square? 2me by L square. Yes, correct? हाँ ना कुछ बोलो.
Yes,
हाँ
sir.
सर.
And B is mk by L square. As such, if you look at the derivation, there is no reason to call this guy as A square. You can call it as A also, because that fellow is remaining as it is throughout the derivation, the first term. Okay, I just called it A square when I wrote it down. This is okay with everyone? A square and B from here by inspection.
Yes, sir.
Then what will be the solution? Theta minus theta prime on the left is equal to, there is a minus sign here in the original expression,
हाँ.
correct? So that minus will cancel with this minus. So this you get this as cos inverse x is u, b is mk by L square. Denominator is square root of A square is 2me by L square. B square is mk by L square the whole square. Everyone agrees? Have a look. Let me get 3 or 4 yeses before we go forward.
Yes, sir.
That is 1. Good.
Yes, sir.
Very good. 2.
Yes, sir.
3. Very nice.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think I am okay with that.
Yes, sir.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Very good. So this is, everyone is agreeing. Now let us quickly rearrange this. Let us take the cos on the other side and also take the denominator on the other side. You will get u minus mk by L square is equal to square root of 2me by L square plus mk by L square the whole square times. Can you recognize something from here compared to your previous derivation which you got in terms of the differential form? This is what you were calling B. Look back in your notes. Which was an constant of integration in that case. देखा क्या बराबर है? Same format, no? U minus mk by L square is equal to B times cos of theta minus theta prime. Yes? Correct? Do you want me to go back to that board? If you don't have it in your notes. This one. Agreeing or not? Or not sure what
Yes,
I am
sir.
talking about? What about others?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyway, it is the same even if you don't. There is nothing to not agree. Everything is there in the notes. Okay. Now, I can take the mk by L square on the other side. I will get R is equal to mk by L square common, big bracket, 1. This 1 comes from this thing going on the other side. ये स्क्वायर रूट में से mk by L square कॉमन लेना है. क्या आएगा? mk by L square will come out as it is. 1 plus. Here if I take mk by L square common, I will get the following thing. Have a look. Try it out. This is my basically final form for the orbit equation, rather the solution to the orbit equation in integral form. This is basically the equation of orbit, final solution for the equation of orbit. Can you identify the terms here? This is the scale factor, which is the same as we got from the differential form, which has to be. And this square root term is what? Yes.
Eccentricity.
Very nice. But now these are all quantities which you are already knowing. E is energy, L is angular momentum, M is mass, reduced mass actually, but basically in planetary system, mass of the planet is a good approximation. What is K in the gravitational problem, in the Kepler gravitational problem? Last time we have discussed this GMM, where G is Newton's gravitational constant, one m is the mass of sun, the other m is mass of the planet. Okay. All those factors are known to us, and therefore once we know all these things, we can determine the eccentricity. Okay. Is this part okay with everyone? Is it fine? Shall we move further? Let us try to interpret this in terms of the effective potential. Let us try to do that. Let us try to examine the different types of orbits in the manner in which we had done last time, using the effective potential. So what is the effective Kepler potential? What does it look like? Anyone remember? There is a 1 by, this is something like L square by 2m r square, and the actual Coulomb potential is and the effective potential is basically something like this. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is a bad arrow. This is. Now let us try to see different types of orbits. Let us take the following energies. Let us say E1, let us say E2, E3, and E4. Okay, 4 energies we have taken. Can you tell what type of orbits we will have during those particular times?
E1 के उधर circular orbit.
Very good. Then E2,
E2
based on our
will
last
be-
time's classification, you can tell.
E2 will be bounded orbit.
Very good. It will be bounded between here and here. Excellent. E3, E3 and E4 are both kind of unbounded, but otherwise,
Okay.
from last time's discussion, at least we have no difference between them. Correct? Everyone agrees with this?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now, let us try to understand the nature of Kepler's orbits from what we have already got for the eccentricity. What is the expression we got for eccentricity? Bolo, bolo, bolo.
2E L square by MK square.
Square root of 1 plus that.
Yes.
That whole thing is the eccentricity. Okay? Very good. Now, For circular orbit, what is the condition?
Eccentric equals 0.
Very good. So, type of orbit, eccentricity and energy. Okay. For a given type of orbit, circular, what is eccentricity? 0, you said, ne? Now, if this eccentricity has to be 0, what should be the value of E in terms of all the other numbers? E should be equal to minus mk square by 2 L square. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Then you will get 1 minus 1, 0. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
And so when you have energy E1, basically your object undertakes a circular orbit. Okay? What is the next one? For an elliptical orbit, what is the condition? For a parabolic orbit, what is the condition? Eccentricity के बारे में बात करो only. And for hyperbolic orbit, what is the condition? Bolo. Do you know the eccentricity limits for any of these things? Elliptical के लिए eccentricity क्या होता है? Anyone?
Greater
than 0 till any limit?
Less than 1.
Less than 1. So 0 less than epsilon less than. This is epsilon is equal to. If 0 less than epsilon less than 1 means what? This quantity has to be negative, ne? 2EL square by mk square has to be negative. If it is positive, what happens? That whole term is 1 plus some positive number. What is square root of 1 plus some positive number? Some number which is greater than 1. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So if epsilon has to be less than 1, then E has to be less than 0. Why? Because L square is a positive quantity, K square is a positive quantity. Both of them are squares, so you cannot touch them. M is a positive quantity, it is mass. So the only thing which can have negative value is energy. Barabar hai?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So for this case, your condition is that energy has to be less than 0, which means where? This is E1, okay? Energy of the first orbit. So the energy has to be greater than E1, but has to be less than 0. Agreeing for this? This is the condition in order to get elliptical orbit.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So if you have this condition, then basically you get an elliptical orbit for energy E2. Let us try to draw that. This is an approximate ellipse. So your object starts here and keeps orbiting like this. Okay? Now, if you notice, the sun is at one of the foci of the ellipse. Okay? The other focus is empty. There is nothing over there. Okay? That doesn't have any physical significance. It just tells you that sun is at one of the foci, other focus is empty. There is nothing there. Okay? I have put a cross there to indicate there is nothing over there. Is this okay? Is this fine so far?
Yes.
Third one, parabolic orbit, what is the condition and eccentricity?
Equal to 1.
Epsilon should be equal to 1. What will be the condition and energy then? Can anyone tell? Square root of 1 plus something equal to 1. Then what should be that something?
0.
Equal to 0.
Very good. So here you get the energy for a parabolic orbit. The energy should be strictly 0, which is here. That is why this is a special case, blue one. Okay? It will give you a parabolic orbit. Hey, what is the difference between parabola and hyperbola? Can anyone tell? I don't think many people would have thought about it. हाँ, इक्वेशन अलग है, मेरे को भी मालूम है. तो उसका सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है इक्वेशन अलग होने का?
पैराबोला मतलब अगर ऑब्जेक्ट पैराबोलिक पाथ फॉलो कर रहे हैं तो वापस आ सकता है, हाइपरबोला में
नहीं आ सकता है, दोनों में भी नहीं आ सकता. We'll discuss this a little bit if required. ठीक है? Remind me at the end of the class, not right now. More or less something like this. ठीक है? All right. So this is a very crude and approximate diagram, as you can see. Again, one of the focus is the sun. The other focus of a parabola is at infinity. So it doesn't really come into the picture. Okay. What is the condition for hyperbola? What should be the condition on the eccentricity?
Greater than 1.
Epsilon should be greater than. Which means what?
Energy should be greater than 0.
Very good. Energy should be greater than 0. So all positive energy states in a Kepler potential, they all have hyperbolic or unbound orbits,
sir,
which is
इसमें
obvious
around the
from
sun
looking
नहीं
at. हाँ बोलो.
इसमें अराउंड द सन नहीं जाएगा ना ऑर्बिट?
Around the sun नहीं जाएगा, but दूर दूर से sometime comets come which are not repeating ना. One time visitors are there in the solar system. Comets which do not come once only, they come near the sun and get scattered. This is my version of a hyperbolic orbit.
Halley comet.
Halley's comet is on an elliptical orbit of very high eccentricity. It repeats every 76 years. I have drawn the other arm and the other focus of the hyperbola. These are all just imaginary constructs to match our mathematical description of what is happening. They have no physical significance whatsoever. Okay? Is this okay? Actually, the hyperbola has a very interesting physical significance. See, how do you know? Now you are told that the orbit is a hyperbola. बराबर है? Correct. Now how do you know which focus पे sun है? ये focus ये focus. Ellipse में फर्क नहीं पड़ता, इधर होएगा, it is symmetric. ठीक है? इधर तो दोनों फोकस एक ही है, इधर तो दूसरा फोकस इन्फिनिटी पे, तो उसका सवाल नहीं उठता. इधर इंटरेस्टिंग है, both the focuses are here. How do you know sun should be here or here? Is this the physically correct picture?
सर पिक्चरच नाही समजला तो.
हाँ, this is the picture. बोल.
पण तुम्ही ते फोकस जवळ का घेतले?
फोकस काय घेतला?
फोकस जवळ का घेतलं ते? म्हणजे
कुठला फोकस जवळ घेतला? तुम्ही
ते मिरर डायग्राम का काढले?
हायपरबोलाचा कन्स्ट्रक्शनच असं असतं ना. हायपरबोला, a mathematical curve called hyperbola has two foci and two directrices. Is the definition of hyperbola. Hyperbola is not a single armed curve, it has two arms. A hyperbola arises when you take a cone and an inverted cone, hourglass kind of thing, and slice it like this, there will be one arm here and another arm here. So there are two arms of the hyperbola always. ब्रेड कट करते हो ना, कभी किया है?
हाँ.
पेंसिल देखा है ना, पेंसिल? हेलो,
Yes sir.
हाँ देखा है.
पेंसिल, दो पेंसिल ऐसा आमने सामने रखेगा,
हाँ.
आई होप यू कैन सी दिस, ऐसा आमने सामने रखेगा, दिख रहा है क्या? This is on my video I am trying to show. If you have the presentation pinned, you won't able to see it.
Yes, sir.
ठीक है?
दिख रहा है.
Now depending on how you cut this, it will generate different conic section. Cut this straight across like this, you will get a circle. You know, na? You cut the pencil straight like this, circular cross section. If you cut it at an angle, you will get an ellipse. If you cut it parallel to the slope of the pencil, then you will get a parabola. And if you slice it straight this way, you will get a hyperbola. Hyperbola has two arms. This is a mathematical fact. I mean, I don't want to bring that in. My question is, how do you know on which focus the sun is? Or center of force, which focus it is on? Answer to this question also, let me tell you. Basically, now imagine I have drawn this picture. How do you know if it is correct or not? First, rub all the imaginary items. What are the imaginary items? This arm of the hyperbola and this cross. Is this behavior correct? Object comes near the sun and then gets repelled.
No, sir.
No, sir.
It is not the correct picture. However, if instead of sun, if the same picture I am talking about as a positively charged particle and another positively charged particle, then is this picture correct?
Yes, sir.
बराबर है ना? So for ellipse, parabola and circle, the second focus does not have much of significance. ठीक है? But in the case of hyperbola, if you have a repulsive potential, for example, when you do Rutherford alpha scattering experiment, in that basically the one charge is here and the other charge comes on this path and goes away. So which focus is your actual physical center of force will depend on whether the force is an attractive one or a repulsive one. Just wanted to point that out because we will use this fact when we are actually looking at scattering in the next module. Okay? At that time we'll revisit this in much more detail, but right now I just wanted to point out that never forget the physical part of the behavior of the system. Don't get carried away by mathematics. So there is a hyperbola, it has two arms, it has two foci. So mathematically you can say mix and match, कौन सा भी focus को कौन सा भी इस पे follow करो चलेगा, वैसा नहीं होता है. Physically, if it's an attractive potential, then this is the center of force and this is the trajectory of the particle. If it is a repulsive potential, trajectory may be same, but the center of force will be here. It won't be here. Okay? Just wanted to point that out. All right. By the way, this particular second case which you have, case number 2, elliptical orbit. Or this particular diagram which you have, elliptical orbit, same thing. This is basically Kepler's first law of planetary motion.
घेऊन जा आधार कार्ड.
Agreed? What is Kepler's first law? Planets go around the sun in elliptical orbits, that kind of thing, right? So you realize that what Kepler had analyzed and obtained as a law, which in turn was used by Newton to basically derive the universal law of gravitation. Derive means extract that from the data. That is just a special case. Okay? The general case has all these other possibilities depending on what is the value of the energy of the system. Is this okay? Is this fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Very good.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All this can also help to define, for example, things like escape velocity and so on. All this comes from this kind of reasoning. It can easily be brought out. Okay. Have a look. Kalkin has a decent treatment of this. He of course spends a lot of time on some other stuff, but he has a decent treatment of this. Goldstein, of course, has a very good treatment of central force motion. Many of these ideas are basically from Goldstein. The structure of these, whatever we have done, is from Goldstein. All right. I would also now like to take up Kepler's second law and Kepler's third law. Basically, try to do that so that we round off our discussion of the Kepler potential in this particular context of the orbit equation. Okay? But before that, I already touched upon this, but basically this was a very important phase in the development of physics. Whatever we are studying today, if you are asked the question, where did physics originate? What will be your answer? Or with whom did physics originate? Who was the kind of Janmatata of physics? If that is the question, can you give me some quick answers to this? What do you feel? What is your opinion on this? I'll give you my opinion on this, my take on this. Basically, Newton did a lot of things, Galileo did a lot of things, but major jumps in mechanics took place when Newton applied the laws of motion to planetary motion by introducing the law of gravity, universal law of gravity. That happened because Kepler had analyzed a lot of planetary data and he had basically tabulated in various ways so that it was in a form which was easily taken by Newton and taken forward. Okay? In turn, Kepler did not make those astronomical observations. Those observations were made by Tycho. So you have this kind of triangle. You have Tycho, you have Kepler, and you had Newton. Basically, Tycho was an excellent observational astronomer. Kepler was excellent in finding connections between the things which are observed by Tycho. And Newton had the gift of putting all these into a mathematical form. Okay? Now, all three of these are extremely important. Okay? If Tycho had not made the experimental... See, Tycho's experimental observations during those days was extremely precise. He used to have what is called a sextant instrument. Sextant is basically something which can go from 0 to 60 degrees, which is used for observing the night sky by sailors and so on to find their way during night sky. But Tycho had built a sextant which was like several meters in diameter and which he used to make extremely precise and minute astronomical observations which were accurate to few arc minutes, not even degrees, arc minutes. Which means that Kepler actually had the opportunity to work with this very precise data, and that is what led to him to realize even minor variations in the motions and so on, which gave him a lot of confidence about obtaining these particular laws of planetary motion. Okay. Without those precise observations, that was not possible. Otherwise, people have been observing the stars since the time of Ptolemy and Aryabhatta, but never people had the confidence to make such precise statements. Kepler had this possibility because he was not using some random, very crude observations, but very, very precise, meticulous observations. And that is a kind of hallmark of modern science. Modern science basically makes extremely precise, extremely accurate, extremely controlled measurements. And then you try to fit a theory to this to make sure that you understand that phenomena thoroughly. Okay? So the quality of experimental data is an extremely important thing, which many people don't really appreciate, apart from the ones who actually do the experiment. Experimental measurements required a lot of painstaking efforts, which Tycho had done. And that is why Kepler had the ability to formulate these laws. He didn't have any deep internal understanding of it. He just says that these numbers seem to be following these patterns. That is Kepler's way of looking at it. And then when Newton came, he put a mathematical framework to it, and then that set the ball rolling for what we, according to me, what we call the modern era of physics. I don't mean modern physics, I mean the modern era of science. Scientific thinking, scientific approach started with this. Basically, the contributions of all three, one class of people who actually make the measurements very, very precisely with great care so that there is no human error involved in that. Second group of people who can sift through this data to understand the patterns which are present. And the third group who will try to think from fundamental principles and try to explain this in a form which basically, apart from the mathematics, also it makes sense intuitively as a physicist. Those are the theorists. Okay, all three are very important. I just wanted to point this out, that there is no such thing as theory is important or experiment. There is no such individual field, which is all three are extremely important: computation, theory, and experiment. Okay, and all three require its own type of skill set, its own type of mental makeup in order to be successful and in order to be good at that particular thing. Okay. Sorry, that was my take on when did physics start. According to me, it started when somehow this combination of Tycho, Kepler, and Newton came about. According to me, that is when the modern scientific thought started in the direction which it took over the next several centuries and continue to take probably. All right, let us come back to our physics instead of spending time on stories. My intention in the final part of this particular class is to talk about Kepler's laws of planetary motion. We have already discussed Kepler's first law, and we saw that it is a special case of a much more general condition, that all orbits in a 1/r type of potential are always conic sections, and planets moving around sun being elliptical is just a special case of this. For example, charged particles moving around each other also have the same behavior because it is also a 1/r potential. Whenever a 1/r type potential is involved, the trajectories are always conic sections. Kepler's first law is just a special case of this general statement. Let us come to Kepler's second law. Does anyone know the statement of Kepler's second law?
Yes, sir.
What does
Line
it talk
drawn
about?
from the sun to the planet sweeps equal area in equal interval of time.
Very good. Excellent. So consider an elliptical orbit, and line drawn from the sun to the planet in our language is basically the radius vector, or the, okay, this has to serve somehow. Basically what Kepler observed is the following, that if I take, let us say, the planet moving from here to here, or I take the planet moving from, let us say, here to here, something like that. Such that A1 and A2 are two areas. The area swept by the planet while it goes from here to here is called A1. The area swept by the planet when it goes from here to here is called A2. And basically Kepler's second law states that the time taken to sweep the area A1 upon the time taken to sweep the area A2 is same as the ratio of the two areas. Which means that if both the areas are equal, then the time spent will also be equal. So in equal amount of time, the planet, rather this line joining the planet to the sun covers or sweeps out equal amounts of area. Okay? So the area of this particular part of the orbital plane, which is enclosed between that portion of the orbit and the sun, the area of this, for any two such constant areas, the time taken to move that distance is also equal. What does it mean? Basically, it means that the particle, when it is close to the sun, it moves fast, and when it is away from the sun, it moves slowly. So the motion is not like equal in equal amounts of time. It is like, if this is the center, if you are watching my video, it moves very fast when it is nearby. When it is far away, it moves slowly. That kind of thing. I hope you caught that on video. I don't know. That way.
Yes, sir.
So, sorry? Anything?
No, sir.
All right. So basically, this is Kepler's second law. Let us examine this particular claim. It's a very interesting thing, so watch closely. Basically, if this is the position of the sun, let us say, or center of the force in general, okay? And this is some portion of the orbit, through a very small angle, let me call it d theta. Now this is actually exaggerated diagram. Actually, this angle is extremely small. Let me make it extremely small so that you don't have to imagine so much. So this angle, let us call it d theta. And when it is moving through such a small or infinitesimal angle, basically the radius remains more or less constant. Radius changes when it moves away. Itna छोटे से distance, radius more or less constant while it is moving through d theta. Does this seem a reasonable approximation that r remains more or less constant when angle is changing by extremely small amount? Fair enough, ne? Agreeing, yes, no? Yeah, very good. What will be the arc length which is moved? The arc length will be r d theta. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now let me treat this guy as a triangle of this type, who has basically the height is equal to more or less r approximately, and the base is equal to r d theta. What will be the area? Half base into height, ne?
Yes, sir.
Half r square d theta.
Very good. Half r square d theta. Half into r d theta into r, which is half r square d theta. So basically you have small area is equal to half r square d theta, which means what will be the rate of change of area with respect to time? Let me do a small change. I'm going to call this with its full name. Okay. What will be rate of change of area with respect to time? Half r square d theta by dt. Agreeing?
Yes,
Which
sir.
is half r square theta dot. What is theta dot?
Angular velocity.
वो तो है, but for central force motion it is equal to L by mr square, ne? Correct? So finally what do you get? d by dt of area is equal to, by the way, just for clarity, this area is area swept by the radius vector. It is not an actual physical area. It is a mathematical construction, just for our understanding. ठीक है? मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि वो एरिया में कुछ कारपेट बिछा हुआ है या मैदान है. It's just open space. You just call it the area swept by the radius vector. What will be this? बोलो. L by 2m. L we already know is a constant. M is a constant. Therefore, we arrive at Kepler's second law of planetary motion. That we have shown that rate of change of area is actually a constant, which is what was Kepler's claim. We proved it, that actually yes, the d by dt of the area is a constant, which means that rate of change of area per unit time is a constant, which means that small area will be swept out in small amount of time, larger area in larger amount of time, and equal areas in equal amounts of time, which was Kepler's original statement. Agreeing? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Everyone is okay with this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now, let us throw our mind back. What is the equation which we used here? Theta dot equal to L by mr square, correct? This was one of the first equations we obtained, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Did we substitute V of r is equal to minus k by r anywhere while getting this theta dot equal to L by mr square? हाँ? नहीं, उसका कुछ लेना देना नहीं है ना. That V of r comes in the r equation. This is part of the theta equation. बराबर है? Correct?
हाँ सर.
So this is actually a general feature of all central force motion. In any central force problem, any orbit which the system is taking, this is always true. Rate of change of area with respect to time is a constant. Okay? It has nothing to do with the Newtonian gravitational potential. Kepler observed this as a special case. Okay? Kepler saw that planets के लिए ऐसा होता है, so he gave it as a law. But this law is also much more universal than what Kepler thought. It is not only valid for planets moving around the sun. It is valid for any object moving under any kind of central force. It is valid for nuclei moving under the influence of nucleons moving under the influence of the central potential of the nucleus. It is valid for electrons in an atom. It is, of course, I mean, in all those quantum mechanical systems, this doesn't strictly make sense, because in quantum mechanics you don't have concept of orbit or area swept by radius vector, but nevertheless there can be equivalent quantum mechanical quantities which are there. But the point is that even when you have Rutherford scattering, particle repelled by another particle, there also this is true. Area swept in equal amounts of time is equal. Just to give you a concrete look at that, suppose this is a positive charge, another positive charge approaches it. What will happen? It gets repelled. बराबर है? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So basically, if you take this area and if you take this area, if both the areas are equal, then amount of time taken to go from here to here is same as amount of time taken to go from here to here. So basically the particle is moving very fast, slows down, repels, then again starts moving very fast. Okay. That is how the particle basically that is how the this law comes into the picture, that as long as the force is a central force, irrespective of which area I am considering, as when the areas are equal, time taken to traverse that much area will also be the same. Is this okay? Okay. All right. Let us also have a look. Let me draw a kind of line for Newton's second law. Kepler's second law of planetary motion. So Kepler's first law of planetary motion and Kepler's second law of planetary motion are actually very general laws, not restricted to planetary motion, and Kepler's laws are special cases of this. Let us quickly have a look at Kepler's third law before we stop. Time up हो गया क्या अपना?
5 minutes है sir.
चलेगा. Let us try to finish this in 5 minutes. Once again, draw an elliptical orbit. ठीक है. The minimum distance is this, r minimum, and the maximum distance is this, r maximum. The smallest distance from the sun occurs at this point, largest distance occurs at this point. बराबर है? What is the original equation of orbit solution? बराबर है? 1 by r is equal to s into 1 plus epsilon cos theta. Theta prime I have taken as 0 because the orbit is oriented in this direction. ठीक है? If you do that, then you get this. What will be a 1 by r max? 1 by r max will occur when this has the least value. That happens when cos theta equal to -1, and 1 by r max is s into 1 minus epsilon. Similarly, 1 upon r minimum will be s into 1 plus epsilon. Using these two, we can do r max plus r min, which will be 1 over s bracket 1 over 1 minus epsilon plus 1 over 1 plus epsilon. If you cross multiply, what do you get? You simplify, this is what you get. And what is r max plus r min? It is nothing but twice the major axis of the ellipse. Major axis is called, normally major axis radius is called as a. So this will be equal to 2a. Yes, बोलिए.
मतलब सर डायमीटर हुई ना वो?
नहीं, elliptical orbit को diameter नहीं होता है. It has major axis and minor axis. and other axis which there is no specific name for, because
Yes, yes.
the major axis the semi major axis is called A, major axis is called 2A, semi minor axis perpendicular to that is called B, half of that is semi minor axis is called B and minor axis is called 2B. I hope this is clear. I mean, generally for an ellipse, this is called 2B and this is called 2A. Are you familiar with this or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Ha,
sir.
sir.
So that is what. So this will be 2A, na? R max plus R min, because both are along the major axis. 2 and 2 cancels and you will get this. Barabar hai. Now there is also a relation between the major and minor axis in terms of eccentricity. B will be equal to A into square root of 1 minus epsilon square. Okay. We'll be using this at a later stage. Okay. What is epsilon in our case? बराबर है. हेलो, आई थिंक सब लोग थक गए.
Yes, sir.
हाँ, होता है, टेंशन नहीं लेने का. This is epsilon. This is the expression which we have derived. What will be square root of, what will be epsilon square? It will be square root will go away. It will be 1 minus epsilon square will be minus 2el square by mk square. Okay. So 1 minus epsilon square will be equal to minus this is something to keep in mind. Okay. What will be the area of the entire orbit? Area of an ellipse is given by pi times a times b, which is basically pi a square into square root of 1 minus epsilon square. Okay. Actually, let us leave it as pi ab. Make life simpler for ourselves. Pi, so nothing to do more. Pi ab. Okay. What will be the area in terms of the time period? We know that d area is equal to L by 2m times dt. This is something we obtain from Newton's second law. Therefore, integration of the area over the entire orbit is the same as integration of this from 0 to the time period of the orbit. So, the area will be LT by 2m. So, LT by 2m is same as pi AB. Okay. What was the scale factor, by the way? Do you remember? mk by L square, ne?
Yes, sir.
So now you basically have pi AB is equal to LT by 2m. But yes, substitute for B first. Let me write this in a better way. LT by 2m is same as pi AB is same as pi a square into square root of 1 minus epsilon square, which is same as pi a square root s into square root of 1 minus epsilon square upon root s. S is a constant, so this doesn't matter. Multiplied and divided by root s. What is root s into root of 1 minus epsilon square? It is 1 upon root a. So this will give you pi by root s into a to the power 3 by 2. And therefore, by equating LT by 2m with this, finally you get that the time period will be 2m by L into pi into 1 upon root s, which will be square root of mk and L in the numerator into a to the power 3 by 2. L goes away and you are left with 2 pi square root of m by k a to the power 3 by 2. Anyway, you only wanted t is proportional to a to the power 3 by 2, but you also got the proportionality constant after doing some amount of jugglery. Okay. There is an epsilon somewhere, nowhere. No. It's fine. Okay. So you can verify this. Okay. This will be your final expression for the time period in terms of the semi-major axis of the ellipse. This is basically Kepler's third law, that the square of the time period is proportional to cube of the semi-major axis. Huh?
So mean distance, no?
Mean distance, which is proportional. Mean distance is proportional to the semi-major axis, no?
Yes, sir.
So it is basically in terms of the semi-major axis in this case. Okay. So this gives you the Kepler's third law as well. And basically within the framework of our discussion of the Kepler potential, we have used the orbit equation and sometimes some of the earlier equations of motion in order to obtain all the three laws of planetary motion from a proper mathematical framework rather than a empirical framework which was done by Kepler. Okay. I think it is okay. We'll close here. Thank you. And we'll continue our discussion of central force. There is one more topic of importance which I would like to discuss next time, particularly related to the Kepler problem. And then we will stop and have a tutorial on all this central force business. Okay. All right.